11?
11?
Yeah.
Traffic.
So we're at a quorum.
Yeah.
Switch with this one. Yeah, quickly I called Patty, but then I'm thinking about it, it's like,
I even was gonna text like maybe a couple of comment, but then I was rushing so much in the time, but thank you.
testing.
Soon, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I do that with many people. Just doing the same thing. I appreciate it, and always text me. That's. Well, I'm all set. If staff is ready, and it looks like CNET is ready, I'll go ahead and call to order the Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, October 3rd. And if we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and we'll go to our acting manager for any Zoom instructions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to members of the board, staff, the public for joining us this evening for the October 3rd regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. The meeting has been properly advertised in accordance with the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act as a hybrid meeting with the option to attend virtually and in person here in the main meeting room. If you're in attendance virtually using the Zoom platform and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please say your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on when the chairwoman calls you. If you're attending in person with us in the main meeting room, when we have a number here tonight, and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please address the board at the podium, state your name, municipality of residence, and topic you wish to speak on. So prior to commencing the meeting, I just have a few short procedural items to cover that you've heard quite often if you come to these. First, members of the public attending using the Zoom platform are asked to remain muted during the meeting to prevent any ambient noise from disrupting the meeting. If a member of the public is acknowledged by the chair, please unmute your microphone for the question or comment. Secondly, board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion so that the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. Finally, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all members can hear and interact using the Zoom meeting platform. So please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Ms. Strickland.
Here.
Ms. Stevens.
I'm here.
Mr. Thompson.
here.
Mr. Gracie Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Heller, I believe, will be joining us a little late. Madam Chair, I turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to public input, and this is an opportunity for anyone to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda. And I'd ask you to come to the podium. Please give your name and township of residence, and just keep it to a few minutes.
Hi, Mark Chaplin. I live 155 East Aaron Drive. I've been traveling through the North Atherton Street, Viro Boulevard intersection for 50 years now. 35 years ago, we moved into a condo off of Viro on Marjorie May Street. And then 33 years ago, we moved into our current home right across Viro at the end of East Aaron Drive. So from my kitchen window, I've been able to watch the traffic on Viro Boulevard for 35 years now. And I'm going to ask everybody to zoom out from this site, just one click. We have a significant population density that lives off of Viro Boulevard. And they all have to get down Viro to Atherton, and I'm assuming probably 3/4 of them will turn into town. Atherton is the most heavily traveled artery into town, and Viro is one of the more heavily traveled roads in Patton. But looking at this site, even without the building or the business plan or anything, the pavement is such that it produces a shortcut, well, two lovely shortcuts. The first one on the way out of town, you're upside down there. On the way out of town, Atherton connects directly to Viro via Bergman Boulevard, and it's less than half the existing distance that PennDOT approved, and it bypasses all 3 traffic lights. Everybody's going to take that. Now, on the way into town, Bergman will connect directly to West Aaron Drive, all the way down North Allen to Clinton. It bypasses 5 traffic lights, Waddle, Walmart, North Atherton, Erin, and North Hills Place. And it's actually a shorter distance than the established route. And we all know that speed limits and stop signs are optional when the police are not around. So what I'm going to ask you to look at here is that, and I used to take this suburban avenue shortcut. It was great. It kept you off of Atherton Street. But the township wisely chose to terminate that so that it did not connect to Suburban Avenue. Excuse me. Now try to picture that intersection now with the traffic we have. 30 years ago, the population density was significantly less. The field where Jefferson Commons is now, that was just a patch of weeds. Where the Point and the Bryn are, that's probably 1,200 students. It was Earl Jadun's horse farm and 3 people lived there. But even then, it was too much overflow traffic. So you separated Bergman from Suburban because it was an unsafe traffic situation. It funneled too much through traffic into our neighborhood, and it was determined that Overlook Heights was not capable of handling that level of traffic. And if you want to go back even 10 years before that, it was about 45 years ago, that little stump of Bergman Boulevard, the terminus, connected directly to Atherton Street. That was Viro Boulevard. But that was determined to be an unsafe intersection, and the traffic light was taken out. So it was unsafe to connect that little stump to Atherton Street and also to Suburban Drive. So I want the supervisors to look at this lot. You're creating 2 through streets here and an unregulated 3-way intersection in the middle of a convenience store parking lot. So I guess my question is, where does Bergman Boulevard begin and end? Those of us who live in Overlook Heights aren't asking for a special improvement to our neighborhood the way the people in College Heights did. We already have the lovely cul-de-sac, and we would just like to keep it that way if we could. That's why we purchased our homes here. And the reason it is still a lovely cul-de-sac is because the township decided that the overflow traffic sneaking down Bergman into Overlook Heights, and consider that was 30-some years ago. It's probably twice that much now. But even back then, that was too much traffic for our neighborhood to handle. I thank you for your time.
Thanks very much. Thanks. And again, if you could give us your name and township of residence.
Good evening. My name is Leah Witzig. I live at 1359 Curtin Street, Overlook Heights. I walk in the neighborhood at least 3 times a week with my neighbor, Ken, and we use walkers. We're out there for exercise, for physical and mental health. It's a nice, quiet neighborhood. We love that we can walk along, and when we're tired, usually me, we can sit down, put the brakes on, sit down against the curb. There are no sidewalks in Overlook Heights. It's just streets with curbs. But it's lovely because we see the young children in the strollers, and we see older children on their bicycles. And it's just a wonderful neighborhood that's kind of turned over and developed more because we've got young families. So what's my concern? My concern is what this Wawa gas station is going to do for my safety and for the safety of the other residents, including the children. If you open up Bergman and let that become one of the discharge sites on the back of the Wawa development, proposed development center, those cars will come down Suburban Avenue, head up the hill at a 4 intersection, but only 3 stop signs at that intersection. They'll come rolling up that hill, right across Aaron Drive, and go speeding down Allen Street, and then turn right to go onto Clinton Avenue to go out. So they skip at least 3 traffic signals coming through. They're going to be roaring like, forgive me, bats out of hell. And I don't think I'm going to feel as safe as I do now to walk in my neighborhood. And I don't think that the opportunity to exercise and visit safely should be taken away from us because a big corporation from Philly wants to put in a gas station at the end of our neighborhood. It's not smart and it's not safe. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
My name is Rita Brave. I am a property owner and my family resides at 1360 Lynn Street in the Overlook Heights neighborhood of Ferguson Township. I also served as supervisor representing Ward 3 from 2016 to 18. As we contemplate upcoming developments within our township, it is imperative that we prioritize safety and efficiency of our roadways and those who use them by conducting a comprehensive traffic survey. Our community is concerned. We're concerned about existing as well as potential increases in vehicular traffic in our quiet neighborhood, on our quiet neighborhood streets. A thorough traffic study will provide us with the necessary data and insights to make informed decisions about the road improvements, traffic management strategies, and safety measures required to accommodate growth and development. I support and encourage development. Responsible development is good for our community. We ask township staff and Board of Supervisors to act as our representatives in a most informed way, understanding traffic patterns, problems, and neighborhood needs before negotiating with developers. While the Northland Mobility Study Report, published in May 2019, considered various modalities up and down North Atherton Street, it did not measure traffic that will shortcut onto parallel roads in the Overlook Heights neighborhood when the main road is backed up. Nor did it wrap into Patton Township and the Viro Boulevard intersection, and that study was 5 years ago. Traffic has increased as commuters who live north and west of town move through our township to work, study, play, or make their return trips. In conclusion, our community urges the Township Board of Supervisors to prioritize the commencement of a thorough traffic study that includes Overlook Heights, subdevelopment and its adjacent and surrounding intersections, and includes all modes of transportation: cars, buses, bicycles, pedestrians with mobility issues, as a baseline to understand current conditions and issues. This study is an investment in our safety, prosperity, and the quality of life for our residents, present and future. By taking that proactive step, the Board of Supervisors and our township can ensure that growth is sustainable and that our transportation and infrastructure can meet the demands of our growing community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ruth Evans, and I live at 31 Abbey Place in Overlook Heights. So we only live just right across the road, and my brother sent in a whole bunch of letters over the course of about a year or two, asking to put some more signs up that said drive 25, and those did get approved and they got put up. And I was just thinking, if a gas station gets put in, then that's going to be, because they're going way too fast, and if a gas station were to get put in, that would just be like more fast people. And that was our concern, because we've already said something about that, and that would just be, because we ride our bikes from all over the neighborhood, and that could just be a problem.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Is there any other public comment? Come on up to the podium. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laura Dineni. I live in Ferguson Township. I received a communication
the other day, and it said that a couple of you up there said you're, Jeremy and Patty, you're committed to our community, and you're for open, responsive government. And I recall, and you probably recall as well, that I had come here a few months ago, and I issued that challenge for something really similar, responsive, accessible, and transparent government. And you know, folks here, they're really here for really an interesting thing, and I'm feeling mourning for them already, so I hope everything can be worked out for them. But what I'm here to ask about is what you think it means to have open and responsive government. Because when I hear things, when I read things in open record requests that I make, where I hear supervisors saying, I am getting really sick and tired of hearing about this solicitor agreement, I commend the chair and manager for their leadership and partnership. And I know that, so I don't want to lose my place. I believe staff have been acting in good faith to provide the board with the solicitor agreement, and that was in July of 2023, July 21st of 2023. And I wonder if you have that solicitor agreement yet, because in that right to know, I did get a copy of that solicitor agreement. And the funny thing about it is that it's dated, where is it? I believe it's May 4th, I don't want to get it wrong. Began April 25th, and then signed by the chair. When was that? You signed it, I think it was that month before. So when I asked as a supervisor for a document that's an open record, and the chair doesn't respond, and other supervisors are copied on that, and I don't want to be a pain, so I don't ask every day, but it's an important thing. We all know why now it's an important thing, because it contains conflict of interest. Do we think it's open and responsive to just not respond to an email requesting a copy of the solicitor agreement? One that was sent twice? It's an open record. Is that the kind of governance that we do? So, again, it's really just a question to think about. If one supervisor in their seat asks for the solicitor agreement, if you're interested, ask me what that is afterward. It's a really important agreement. Outlines conflict of interest for the person that represents the township legally. In the new one, I don't know, again, I don't know if the supervisors ever did get a copy, but it specifies that the solicitor should be putting that in writing. Conflicts of interest. I don't know how, that's the kind of conversation I'd have been having as a supervisor, which is a good conversation. There's nothing to be afraid of. And in fact, the only thing you have to fear is to not have conversations like that. You want to have conversations like, what does it mean to you to have a conflict of interest? When we were in our interview with the solicitor that we selected, what it meant to that person, they said they would recuse themselves from both sides of whatever it was. That was in the interview. So then, as a supervisor, it really just makes sense that then you're just going to follow up to make sure that's in the agreement, right? So there's really no reason why somebody should be made to be felt like they're wrong for asking that. And I'm concerned about the kind of climate that's been created because of how I was treated. So
Have you gotten a copy of the agreement? I will forward it to you, that I received through Right to Know. When I was chair for 2 years, I spent many, many hours on the phone with the current chair, talking, mentoring her, and it's been a real shocking learning process to see that that in return, I was not given information that I should have had access to as a supervisor. But it's even, what I'm trying to say is, it's even more shocking in the context of our relationship. And here 6 months out, I can finally articulate that to you. But it's important in government, right, that we are open and we are responsive. And if one supervisor asks for a solicitor agreement, it's an open record. If it's there, it should be given to them, no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Hi. Can I speak virtually at the meeting?
Yes, and we'll get to you as soon as we finish with attendees in the room. Thank you.
I'm Wes Glebe. I live in Ferguson Township. I wanted to thank the township for, well, I wouldn't call it a heroic effort, but it was long overdue to get 1004 and 1006 de-weeded. And it looks good. I mean, as good as empty buildings can look, but it really made a difference. So thank you. There is a tree that you don't need to be an arborist to know is dead on the corner of 118 South Butts, because branches 6 to 8 inches in the last week or so, 2 weeks ago, have fallen out of it. These are big branches. I'm hoping that somebody can tend to that tree, because it could fall on somebody. And then again, maybe it'll just fall down and won't make any noise if nobody's there. So who knows? But it would be good to take that down, I think. And I believe it's on Ferguson right away. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment in the room for items not on the agenda. If you could please make your way to the podium and give us your name and your township of residence.
Good evening, Mark Badorf, 1619 North Allen Street, Overlook Heights. This is in regards to the proposed Wawa at the corner of Atherton and Aaron. I would strongly urge the Township Board of Supervisors to do a thorough and comprehensive traffic study. In addition, I would ask that they never open Bergman Avenue to the neighborhood. Part of the reason many of us have located there is the fact that our entire neighborhood is cul-de-sacs. There are no through routes through our neighborhood. I'm not opposed to development, I'm not opposed to commerce, but Mr. Spiegel himself said 75% of their traffic, and I'm just going with his round numbers, 75% of their traffic are already cars that are passing by, which suggests that 25% of their traffic, their business, are cars that otherwise would not have been going there. Some of those cars will inevitably either intentionally cut through our neighborhood, and it's a public road, okay? They will cut through our neighborhood, increasing traffic, and some of them will accidentally cut through the neighborhood. I live at the corner of Suburban and North Allen, and I watch the baseball moms and dads leave the park. And I see them turn up Suburban Avenue, and I chuckle to myself, well, I'll see you in a moment, okay? I mean, there is signage that says dead end, but people inevitably will go that way. And if Bergman's open, it would be an absolute disaster for our neighborhood. And so I hope the township never considers that. And finally, I would ask that you consider a right turn only lane from Aaron Avenue, Aaron Street, onto North Atherton heading north. And yes, that would cut into Wawa's property, but I do think that could potentially alleviate some traffic. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Other public comment in the room before we go online? And I'm seeing none, so we'll move to online. If you could raise your virtual hand and we can call on you. We did have one. Did somebody note? Okay. I see Ethan Dean. You could go ahead and unmute yourself. Give us your name and your township of residence, please.
Hello, my name is Ethan Dean. I live in Ferguson Township, right next to where the proposed building project is. I am calling in to address some of my concerns with the pre-work that has been done for this project. I was at the little town hall that they did, and so to give some background, I walk often along Atherton from the neighborhood, and appreciate the sidewalk that is there. And when I raised my concerns about the traffic safety that would come from from putting an entryway from Atherton to the proposed Wawa parking lot, I was told that they did not know how that would impact the traffic, but that PennDOT would take care of that. And I just wanted to point out that PennDOT has a history of not creating safe roads or sidewalks for pedestrians. I know this was mentioned earlier. People brought up their concerns with the safety, but additionally, you can just look right across the street and look at that Dunkin' Donuts entryway, even with a right turn only from one direction. That is totally lowered. There's no good view of pedestrians. There's no raise for them to walk. And so I really think that this is something that we should be considering if we're going to be adding this and making sure that we have safety for the people who are living in the township, and as well as the other concerns people have mentioned about the vehicle traffic. And so I really think, since this is, an issue that people from the public have been speaking out about, we should really consider, if we're going to integrate this into our community, who we're going to try to best serve. And I think the interests of the people who live here should come first, over the business that is coming in the community. It's not necessarily that it is happening, just I don't believe the necessary preparations have been made, and I think that the township should further go research onto this impact. So thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment online? And I'm not seeing any. Okay, so we'll move on to approval of minutes, and there's two sets of minutes. The first is September 13th, the Board of Supervisors work session minutes, and the second is September 19th, the regular meeting minutes. Were there any changes or corrections to those? And if not, would someone care to make a motion to approve?
This is Patty. I move to approve the minutes.
Hi, Mr. Thompson will second that.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to authorities, boards, and commissions reports, and we have the Park and Recreation Authority report with Mr. Bill Keogh.
Thank you and good evening. All of you should have received in your packet my written report for tonight's presentation, but I would like to highlight a few things. You all should have received, as the residents of Ferguson Township should have received in the mail, the fall 2023 activity guide by the authority, the Recreation Authority, and that particular document is very informative when it comes to the variety of programming and accessing that programming that we have provided in the region through our multi-agency and governing body through the COG. We've been busy this last month we're trying to finish up the hiring of an assistant director. As you may recall, when our director from a couple of years ago resigned, we appointed our assistant director as an interim. Subsequent to that, we did a search nationwide in terms of a replacement, and our assistant director ultimately was hired as the full-time director of the park agency. That left the position of assistant director vacant, and we have been on a search to fill that position. And the final interviews are scheduled for October 5th. And is that today? 2 days? Okay, October 5th. Staying on with personnel, just to inform you, the COG facilities project manager, who is an engineer, and was carrying a fair amount of the COG side and the authority side of the Whitehall Road development, resigned, and that full workload now has been transferred over to the Whitehall Road Park Project Management Team. It's not as big a lift as you might think, because in fact the construction end of the Whitehall Road project is virtually finished. What we are doing now is crossing the T's and dotting the I's with regard to all of the partners that we had in developing that park. So the management team should be able to handle that fairly easily. A highlight with regard to our pools, our pools are a very active program, Park Forest and the pool and State College. We sold 4,518 pool passes through August. And that's a significant number that are the full-time pool passes. In addition to that, there were a total of 68,959 individual visits to the two pools this year. And that's a pretty busy pool activity program. We've gone inside now with our pool program. We work with the State College Area School District as a partner, and so our winter pool activities and fall pool activities are underway in the State College High School pool. Millbrook Marsh. We were very fortunate with the construction companies that we have working on our two projects at the Marsh. They have worked very well with us to allow keeping Millbrook Marsh programming going and not being interfered drastically by the construction process. As you know, anytime you put a construction zone on a public piece of property, you have the potential for all kinds of interferences. They worked very, very well with our staff and the Millbrook Marsh Advisory Committee in terms of allowing us to have fairly large amount of our regular programming. The big issue, of course, at the Marsh is the boardwalk. There are many partners in the boardwalk, and as you saw on my report, I identified those partners. It's our intent as an authority in January to begin the discussions with the partners in terms of how are we going to fund the reconstruction of part of the boardwalk. If you remember correctly, we've had two figures thrown at us in terms of possible costs at that particular site in order to do the boardwalk work that needs to be done. One figure, big, was $6 million. The other figure, bigger, was $9 to $10 million. So we're not talking about a small chump change kind of activity. It's going to take a concerted group effort with a lot of partners in order to do whatever is going to ultimately be done in order to get that boardwalk up and up to the state it was in prior to its collapse. And as I said, in January, we're going to start the process of how do we fund that particular activity. Everything is winding down at Whitehall Road. The authority did make a decision week and a half ago about the grand opening kind of issue with regard to the park, because we certainly intend to have a grand opening for the Whitehall Road Regional Park. As we looked at the wrapping up activities that need to be done in order to have an occupancy permit for the park, we were looking at mid-October, end of October, maybe the 1st of November, and the authority decided that we were going to hold off an official grand opening until the spring, just because we were getting into the point in time where the weather became a major factor in dictating success and having an outdoor activity like a grand opening. So there'll be more to come on that. It is not going to be a little get-together. We're planning on having a fairly major grand opening for this park, but it is going to be moved to the spring. The last item I want to mention is the Active Adult Center, and if you look at your fall guide for activities, you can see such a variety of activities for our aging population. Couple of statistics. During August, we were averaging 52 different people daily in attendance, and that's significantly different. None of you, I think, on the board were here when we were operating an adult center downtown in State College, but that kind of attendance just wasn't happening in those days. But we had an average of 52 people, and because of the registration process that we have when people come to the adult center, we are able to track even their township of residence. This is the one program where we can track township of residence fairly easily. And of the 3,588 center visits in August, a little over 16% were Ferguson Township residents. And I think that represents, if I did my math correctly, about 592 visits by Ferguson Township residents during the month of August. And I think that's fairly impressive. Any questions?
Thanks so much. Questions, Mr. Keel?
I was interested to see that statistic on the Active Adult Center. Do we know what was bringing them there in August? Was it to meet up with friends, attend programming, or even maybe get some air conditioning, which I'm sure is free there compared to at their house?
Well, we don't monitor necessarily why they're there. My observation when I attend, just to see how things are going and so on, it's very definitely activity oriented. The variety of activities that they have to meet a number of people's interests tends to be the driver for attendance. I'd like to say that it's the social, and it is, but it's the social within the activity kind of thing. If the activity center were located in a residential zone, I might say to you that it's neighbors getting together, just, yeah. But this is not. It's in the commercial zone. It's in the mall, out at Nittany Mall, and it's far from a residential gathering place. So I would say that the activities drive most of the attendance.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patty.
Thank you. And thanks, Bill, for the mentioning about the active adult center and the percentage that are Ferguson Township residents and how you know those numbers. And I think, like everybody, it's impressive to hear that. And so that's why I'm going to again advocate that as a Parks Authority member for our township, that we really push to get rid of rec deck, or at least ask for a modification or an update to rec deck where we can get the numbers of Ferguson Township people participating in the parks and recreation programs. That sort of data is helpful for us to know programmatically who from Ferguson Township is participating in soccer or events at the marsh or whatever. That is impressive, and that helps us justify to residents programmatically supporting parks and recreation. So thank you for that, and I would really appreciate any advocacy you can get for getting a registration system that will support us getting data back on who's programmatically participating in parks. And my second comment / question is, can you give us once again an update on the food truck that the Parks Department and the Parks Authority has approved to purchase?
Thanks for that latter one. I have written in my notes, Patty - ask about park food truck. And so I just didn't happen to mention that. I'll mention that first. The food truck concept, which came forward a couple of years ago under a different park and recreation director, that concept has been put on the back burner, if not dropped altogether. That doesn't mean that we're abandoning the opportunity for food to be available in some capacity at both pools. We heard in our surveys loud and clear that our residents who were using the pools wanted a food option that would get them through lunches and that kind of thing. We're looking at staff is now looking at a different way of delivering that particular amenity. It would involve, and I don't want to get caught, Patty, describing something that I don't know a great deal about because I haven't done the history on it yet, hasn't been presented, but it'll involve food carts as opposed to food truck. And it would involve probably having 2 of these carts at a significantly less amount of cost as compared to the food truck. And that particular project kind of has been put on a back burner because we're trying very hard to get the Whitehall Road project complete. And that has been front and center with the need to get an assistant director hired. And so I think you can put the truck concept to bed, but we are going to continue to pursue having food as an option amenity at the pools. I also understand that we are switching software. And to the extent that that software, in terms of people's participation, is going to be able to help us track township by township or municipality by municipality residents, it may improve that situation. But I don't want to say to you that we will be able to track every user of every park amenity and every park program to a particular township. Among other things, one has to enter data in order to get data out. And when you come to group sports activities that we don't run, we don't necessarily have access to the residency of the participants. They are renting our facility, the park's facility, but they are in charge of all of the participants. They are in charge of the program. So I don't know how that might get ultimately improved or changed, but I know that that is one of the barriers in terms of getting 100% tracking of residency with regard to municipalities.
Thanks. Other questions for Mr. Keogh before I go to mine? I'm not seeing any hands up. Thanks so much for the report. I guess just I'll touch on Patty's question first. So obviously it is complex to try to capture all that data. So I guess as our park authority rep, you know how important that is to us. So I guess bring that question back to the authority. You know, what are the recommendations, the ideas on how to capture the most information possible? Obviously, we're not going to know who from what township went to what park just to play one day. You know, there's going to be a wash in some of it, just kind of assuming everybody's going to everything. But with at least with programming, if you know, take this back to them to, you know, have the discussion, how can we get the most data? Because we're not the only ones who are interested in that, and like Patty said, that helps justify the costs. And going into the you know, these budget discussions, that's just incredibly helpful to have.
And one of the reasons, it's my perception, one of the reasons that we're able to give you data at the Active Adult Center that we are not able to give you in terms of general programming is the fact that the Active Adult Center is a partnership kind of program of which the county and the state are very heavily involved. They require the collection of data and managing of that data that is not part of our system. I would be very concerned. I mean, they collect things like Social Security numbers. I clearly don't want us in the Social Security number business in terms of our participants. I feel that they need to have, you know, the freedom to go into whatever programs without giving up some of that data. So you do walk kind of a thin line, but I know that because the Active Adult Center is funded jointly with county and state monies, that there is a different set of rules that we have to comply with. Otherwise, we wouldn't be collecting some of that data. But we have the data available. And yeah, I will continue to opt for ways of tracking some of this. And what I think might need to happen, Lisa, is it may be that we might need to have, and I'm thinking out loud here, but the possibility of having one member from each of the municipalities' elected officials sit down as a group with our staff, our administrative staff, and a couple of people from the authority to talk through what the problems and risks are with regard to collecting some of this data and you know, make a decision as a governing body as to what you know, how you want us to collect it. Because some of this data, you know, I don't feel comfortable with some data sitting in these cloud operations. And the other aspect of it is that some of the data is for people participating who are third party to the Park and Recreation Authority. A lot of the soccer people, we're not running their programs, they're just renting our facilities. So collecting some of that data and making them give us some of that data, and then entering some of that data. Team sports, they don't register by person, they register by team.
Right.
And so we don't have that individual data.
And exactly, yeah. And so I guess that would just be the ask, is to go back with those questions, those kinds of suggestions, and work it out with the authority, with those members and staff, and see what's a possibility, especially if you're getting some new software. And then real quick before I go to Patty, I just wanted to say, you mentioned the Millbrook Marsh Boardwalk funding, and just in case we're not meeting here together again before then, please, keep us up to date on those discussions. Obviously, we're interested in how that goes, and I think there's a tie in there likely with the governance committee and how things evolve with that. So however you can keep us posted on those discussions, I think you do a good job of that. So just wanted to mention that. And then to ask quickly, so will the park be, Whitehall Road Regional Park now, will that be accessible to the public once the occupancy permit is received? We won't wait for the grand opening to allow people to use it.
We talked briefly about that, and I'm not sure of what the final answer is. I believe once the occupancy permit is granted, that whatever signs and whatever tape will go down. The problem that we ran across was the all-ability park amenity will be closed in the wintertime. And it is a major feature of the park itself. And the fields will not be ready for any kind of use this fall. And so consequently, when we look at what will be available if we were to have a soft opening, the walking trail, but as far as the amenities go, in our discussion, we were thinking that, they're not going to be available.
So the playground just won't be ready. It's not going to be closed every winter, right? It just won't be ready this winter?
Oh, it's ready now. Certain parts of that playground will not be available in the winter.
Okay.
That's correct. Maintenance, for example, removal of all of the snow on the individual activities that are in there. That's not going to be, part of our regular, daily, everyday taking care of during the wintertime. There probably will be signage that says, please do not use it during the wintertime.
And I'll go back to Patty.
Thank you. So, Bill, I just wanted to sort of clarify. I'm not interested in people's data and storing that. I just want to know who is using the Parks and Rec programs. So I'm not interested, so programmatically what CRPR is providing, I'm interested in just the number of Ferguson Township's participants, kind of like the library. They give us all this data on we had, Ferguson Township residents checked out the most books. They seem to be able to figure it out. So I just am interested in a number to help justify, as Lisa said, we're getting into budgeting, and as we have to slash and we don't have numbers to support. I understand that third party, maybe Center Soccer, I'm not even sure if that's part of CRPR or not, but I understand that third parties use it, but I'm sure they have lists and things like that. But so just to be clear, those parties that rent these fields from us, they carry their own liability insurance then for their participants? Because it would seem to me that if we have to cover liability, then sure, I'll take that data to know whether it's a Ferguson Township resident or not.
Now, they provide their insurance issues. I mean, we have a certain amount of insurance on every park and every amenity in every park. but we are not necessarily covering every individual who is participating in an activity. That is left up to the organizations.
Thank you.
I think, Patty, one of the other confusing issues, if one starts to put a lot of emphasis in terms of budget and how many residents from Ferguson Township, for example, are using the parks, if we can only supply partial data, that then starts to skew decision-making issues. If we can only supply data for everything except team sports, well, that starts to skew the stuff. One of the issues that I've heard is that College Township, for example, gets credit on some of our statistics for participation because they have a 4-field ball field complex in College Township, or in the township. Therefore, that's where the activity is taking place. But that doesn't mean that a quarter of them are from Ferguson Township. It just means that the activity is going on in College. So I think it is a difficult issue, Patty. I will continue to try and push the idea of being able to provide the municipalities and the electeds that kind of data. And I understand that the new system that I think is coming online can give us more of that data, but I don't know as I'm willing to say that we can promise 100%.
Right, and I want to be clear, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm making myself clear. I understand the challenge of getting park usage. I'm not talking about park usage data. I'm talking about I'm talking about programs. So programmatically, when I sign up for CRPR, whether it's yoga or whether it is a Millbrook Marsh composting event, I go into RecDeck. I personally go in and enter my data. I'm looking for programmatic data, not who's using the parks, because I understand that's difficult to get, but it should be easy to get program data, because I enter the information myself when I sign up for what comes to me in that fall guide.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to special reports and acknowledgements under diversity, equity, and inclusionary initiatives and acknowledgements. Domestic Violence Awareness Month is this month. Hispanic Heritage Month is September 15th through October 15th. Filipino American Heritage Month, German American Heritage Month, Italian American Heritage Month, and Polish American Heritage Month are this month as well. And then we will move to COG and regional committee reports. First up is the Center County Metropolitan Planning Organization. And I attended that on September 20th. Just a couple notes to add to what was in the agenda. We had an update on the State College Area Connector. The Pell study was done. You see some information on that in the agenda. In the work plan we reviewed, I just wanted to note that there are under special studies in that, there is an item on Route 45 issues. We had been bringing that up from the Harris end down to our end, and actually even over in, I want to say Potter Township, some different Route 45 issues, so that was nice to see that that was on there under special studies. We reviewed the implementation plan for the new strategic plan, and I did want to note that there were some changes in there, particularly regarding the technical committee. There were some pretty big changes on that, and also lengthening the terms for the coordinating committee members. So whoever sits on that next will want to know that those terms have been extended. It's been a 2-year term. And then just to mention on the budget, because this was under the first Finance Committee budget agenda last Thursday, there is a pretty big request for increase under municipal contributions for a CCMPO budget. The majority of that is going to staffing and contracting. One of those, or there would be one position, it's a transportation grants specialist. I might have the wording on that wrong, but it is really somebody to go out and seek grants for the bipartisan infrastructure legislation where there are funds available right now. Another large part of that increase is going to contracted grants work to support that position. So hoping to apply for a few different grants a year over the course of the length of the legislation. It is a big increase, and you'll see that in the final budget. We'll be making decisions. We're kind of just taking input over these next few budget meetings in Finance Committee, and then making decisions at the wrap-up meeting. So if you have thoughts on that, feel free to email me about that. Like I said, they are fund-seeking positions, that one and that contract position, so, or funding for the contractor. So hopefully in the end, what it does is just fulfill funding needs that are already on the tip. So hopefully it's helping to pay for itself in the end, but you know, I expect there to be a lot of conversation around that because it is a pretty big increase. Any questions on CCMPO? Not seeing anything, so we'll go to Parks and Recreation Governance Committee.
Thank you. We had a pretty good meeting. We were really starting to look at the restructuring of things to eliminate overlap between duties between the authority, like who's in charge of what. So we're using a matrix to talk about things like advocacy, advising, fundraising, etc. And so we're kind of working through that with the facilitator. And then we were talking about operations and really operations of, we were saying that operations of parks really needs to be broken out into maintenance operations or programmatic operations, that those two divisions are probably important to look at. And then other than that, we sort of have reached the end of our budget with using the facilitator. I think we might be able to use her 2 more times. And so we thought maybe we would try as a committee to try and work on some issues at our next meeting without the facilitator. And if in fact we need her again, to bring her in for the following meeting or something like that. So I think we have maybe like 2 more uses with her, 2 more meetings with her to stay in budget. But we're going to give it a go and try and go without the facilitator for our next meeting. But the progress is slow and steady, but we are moving forward. And again, just looking at restructuring or eliminating maybe some committees that are overlap. So that's about where we are. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Good questions on that committee. Thanks very much for that work. I know that is not an easy task, so appreciate that. Okay, there's nothing under other committee reports, so we'll go to staff reports. The manager's report was included. Anything to add to the Public Works Director's report?
Nothing to add. There was a paper report.
Thank you. Questions for Dave? Not seeing any. And Planning and Zoning Director's report.
It's on the agenda. If there are any questions, happy to answer any.
Questions on that report? Not seeing any. So we'll move to unfinished business. And the first item is 125 East Pine Grove Road, final land development plan. And we'll go to Jenna.
Thank you. Providing the agenda is the 125 East Pine Grove Road final land development plan dated September 13th, 2023. The parcel is located at 125 East Pine Grove Road. It's about 0.496 acres. It's zoned village. The plan is proposing to expand parking for a new commercial use in the existing structure. The proposal includes an additional 19 parking spaces and other hardscaping around the structure for a total of 16,941 square foot increase in impervious area. Staff and Planning Commission have reviewed the plan and is recommending approval with conditions as outlined in the Community Planner's Memorandum dated September 20th, 2023.
Great, thank you. Let's see if there's any questions on this or comments before we go to a motion. Yes, Matt.
Yeah. Thanks again. Sorry to be attending remotely, but I appreciate the opportunity to just ask a couple questions. Long story short, of course, along the alleys, we've noted some issues with some public infrastructure conduits currently. I'm just curious how the, oh boy, what is it called here? The detention pond or the detention area relates to maybe offlow from the parking lot that's proposed there and where the water actually goes. So I know there's like a manhole that's been proposed in some of the drawings, or at least identified in the drawings, culverts, etc. So I was just hoping to understand a little bit more about where the water will actually go from the parking lot.
So I am no stormwater expert. We do have the engineer here as well, but I know that our ordinance does require that all stormwater from the site will be mitigated on site. So we have Mike Vow here with Stahl Schaefer. He can go into that a little further.
Thank you. As Jenna relayed, our stormwater is mitigated on site. In the event of a catastrophic rain event, we do have a discharge pipe on our stormwater feature, which is an underground detention. It does outlet to the corner of the property and into a stabilized alley.
Oh, I see. So it actually flows down Ward Alley. Is that the intention? If it does occur at that level?
In a catastrophic event, yes, it does.
Catastrophic as in how many year flood type of scenario?
It would be above the 100-year flood event.
Above the 100-year flood?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I think that's, I noted too that there was some underground storage tanks potentially and other things. Are those, could you maybe help me understand what those are along that as well?
They're essentially, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, please.
They're essentially a grid system of plastic grids that create void spaces underground that hold an amount of water and gradually let it out over a period of time through an orifice at the manhole itself. So it's a detention facility to hold the water back in these smaller storms and gradually let it out. Most of it is being infiltrated into the ground.
Okay. Okay, so it's essentially prepared for a 100-year flood type scenario, catastrophic as I understand it. Generally speaking, I know a 100-year flood can happen more frequently than 100 years. Do we have some data or an idea how many 100-year floods we've had over the past 50 years?
I do not have that data.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious to understand that a little bit more because knowing something of hydrology, etc., I'd be concerned that, you know, a 100-year flood that happens, 3 times in the past 5 years, in fact, we may have even had an event like that this summer. So I'm, okay, just trying to understand the frequency of that. Maybe we can pull that up on NOAA or something quickly. I don't know if we get that data, but my only questions were around where the water was going. I think the rest of it I was clear on, so.
We can look into that and get you that 100-year storm data.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions?
Can I make a comment on the
Yes, please,
data?
go ahead. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, our current ordinance uses some some graphs based on data collection and history that the stormwater engineers use. You know, as we know, climate change, we're experiencing flooding more frequently. So I think, there have been different agencies, Mr. Heller, that have been studying this, and I would think eventually we'll be adopting new curves, so to speak, but they've not been, adopted or ordained yet. I think that's safe to say. But it is, that issue is under review. But I don't know, I can't answer the question, but Jenna said she'll look into some more information for you.
Okay. And from my perspective, it's just trying to understand the potential frequency that we'd have to work with something that could happen there. But, 100-year floods, well, hopefully they don't happen more than once every 100 years, but more to follow on that. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. I would hope our stormwater engineers reviewed this, and so, yeah, it's tough on small sites, but presumably they've made it work with the pre-development and post-development flows, and presumably the water's going where it would have been going and being released at a controlled rate. But all good questions.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, when I see an outlet, then I think, pressure builds up in a type of scenario flowing down an alley. But okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks. Other questions or comments? And if not, would someone like to make the motion?
Hi, Mr.
Yeah,
Thompson.
this is.
I, Mr. Thompson, will move that the Board of Supervisors approve with conditions the 125 East Pine Grove Road final land development plan as described in the Community Planner's memorandum dated September 20th, 2023.
And this is Matt. I will second.
Thanks. Any other discussion? And if not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next is the IMP final subdivision plan.
All right, provided in the agenda is the IMT final subdivision plan dated July 11, 2023, and last revised September 1st, 2023. The IMT subdivision plan is located along Blue Course Drive at the intersection of West College Avenue and Old Block Road. This is tax parcel 004017A. It's located within the general commercial zoning district and the corridor overlay district. The applicant is proposing to subdivide the parcel into 2 lots, one commercial lot and one stormwater management lot. The existing lot is 9.234 acres and includes an existing stormwater basin on the northern portion. That stormwater basin will not be part of this future land development plan. That is for other projects upstream that are being mitigated currently. So what this property owner is doing, they are just subdividing that off for a clean break from those responsibilities. So proposed lot 1 will be 6.3 acres, and proposed lot 2, the stormwater management lot, will be 2.9 acres. Sidewalks are to be added along Blue Course Drive, connecting the existing sidewalks to the north. Sidewalks will also be installed along West College Avenue, given a connection to the sidewalk in front of the Blaze Alexander property. Staff and Planning Commission have reviewed the final subdivision plan and is recommending approval, subject to the conditions as described in the Community Planner's memorandum dated September 21st, 2023.
Great, thank you. Okay, any questions on this before we go to a motion? Not seeing any. So would someone like to make the motion?
Sure, I move that the Board of Supervisors approve the final subdivision plan, subject to the conditions as described in the Community Planner's memorandum dated September 21st, 2023.
Is there a second?
And this is Matt. I'll go ahead and second.
Great. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed say no. All right, thank you. Next is a continued discussion on subdivision and land development and zoning ordinance amendments.
All right. Provided in the agenda are proposed amendments, Chapter 22, Subdivision Land Development, and Chapter 27, Zoning. The proposed amendments address areas of concern identified by staff in the Pine Grove Mills Small Area Plan Advisory Committee. These recommendations are in response to development proposals on smaller lots in the township and provide flexibility for more urbanized areas of the township. The drafts included with the agenda are based on the discussions from the September 13th Board of Supervisors work session. So it's really those updates to the shared parking as proposed by Mr. Heller for any lot that is within the village zoning district. They would have that ability to provide shared parking if you are also zoned village. And that is really the only specific amendment where we call out village. The rest of these amendments, they are really to address all small lots that are going through land development review in the township. We've had many issues with office commercial, terrace streetscape area. We recognize we have a lot of suburban like ordinances, so providing that flexibility for these smaller lots. But we want to get feedback on what we have thus far. Otherwise, I heard positive reviews of the text at the work session. So we just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Thanks, and I'll see if anybody has any comments on this. I only had a couple, so not seeing any. Mine were so minor. So the only thing I was wondering about is the off-site parking. So any off-site parking has to be in the same zone, in the same type of district.
So currently in our ordinance that we have, yes, you have to be in the same zoning district, and we've added those additional requirements in the village for that pedestrian access, etc.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So the only thing I was thinking, because we talked about the boundary last time, and so that's my concern is, we had a lot of residents from down in the western portion to be extended with the school and the church. So we had a lot of residents come in and not be in favor of that. So considering that and the potential use of either of those parking lots as shared parking, if we did not expand the zoning district in that direction, I was thinking, could a stipulation be that if the shared parking is not in the same district or same zoning district, could it be approved conditionally? So say if we didn't, does that make sense?
Yeah, because I think that was, staff's biggest concern, the best way to address, and really for the Pine Grove Mills area, it's taking advantage of naked egg parking and the school.
Mm-hmm.
Those are probably the biggest areas, which they are not zoned village. So the best way to address that as a problem. And if it were to, that's a great way to have that stipulation. I would be concerned if we did it township-wide,
right,
how that could be potentially
Yeah.
abused, but there may be a way to solely only permit that for village zoning sites.
Okay.
Proposed development.
Because since in the Saldo there is that separate village zoning, so that was my thought on that. And then the other thing was in the quick view, I wouldn't be supportive of adding schools in there right now because I wasn't supportive of extending the boundary. I just think that's pretty big, and so I don't know if there are other schools in the center region that are in a commercialized area. I think they're mostly in residential. I don't know if they are in, maybe.
Radio Park's like a stone throw.
Yeah, but it's bordering, I think, R2 or whatever their R2 is.
PRD.
And a PRD.
Borough,
And
yeah.
so, anyways, my thought was that's still a pretty big, to make that village zoning. So I'm still not in favor of that. So I just was not interested in adding that to the quick view at this time. So that would be, and then I was trying to think through, obviously the parking is the big benefit of having both the church and the school added, and so trying to think of a way through that. But those were my couple of comments on it. I don't know if anybody else had anything else to add. I know we were just kind of taking a look. I'm not seeing anything. And this is just a discussion item, so if there's nothing else, okay, I'm not seeing anything, so we'll move forward and we'll go on to new business. And the first item is the consent agenda. Did anyone need to remove anything for further discussion? And if not, would someone like to make a motion to approve?
I, Mr. Thompson, will move that we approve the consent agenda.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed, say no. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to a request for consideration of a waiver for the Burkett-Lucas minor subdivision plan.
All right, on September 12th, 2023, Derek Lucas requested a waiver from Chapter 22401 1A2C, existing features. Natural features for subdivision of lands belonging to David Burkett Living Trust. So this minor subdivision plan proposes adjusting lot lines to convey 0.17 acres from David Burkett Living Trust over to Mr. Lucas. It's located at 3189 West Pine Grove Road. The David Burkett Living Trust property abuts Mr. Lucas's property to the north with no addressable structures on the property. There is an ag conservation easement on the David Burkett property that was established in January of 23. The applicant is requesting a waiver from having to show all the trees 6 inches or larger on the subdivision plan. So not only in the area that he is, the portion that's going over to Mr. Lucas, he would have to show all of the Burkett Living Trust and his property. For such a small lot line adjustment, they are requesting that waiver very similarly to the Fur Drive minor subdivision the board saw a couple meetings ago, I believe. Staff and Planning Commission have reviewed the request and is recommending approval of the waiver from 22401 1A2C, existing features.
Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, this is Matt. I'll go ahead and make a motion that the Board of Supervisors grant the waiver from 22-401-1-A-2-C, existing features.
This is Corey, I second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. And we're moving on to discussion on spongy moth egg mass counts and potential aerial spraying in spring 2024. And we'll go to Dave.
Thank you. I will give you a brief review here, and Jenna Wargo is going to provide you some overheads and some images to look at that might be a little cleaner than what we have in the board packet. In addition, the memo that I'm going to show you has been updated as of today. It does include the areas that are listed. So, at the request of the manager, the arborist conducted, what do we need to do?
Can everyone at home see what I'm showing? The memo? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, they can see it, but we can't see it.
Yeah. Hold on.
Okay, it looks like it was taken down.
Yeah. I have to do a little rearranging over here.
Well, I'll speak as Jen is rearranging. Excuse me. So at the request of the manager, the arborist conducted some egg mass counts for spongy moth, which was previously known as gypsy moth. So, and the reason that she asked him to conduct an egg mass count is because there is a guideline that's published by the Penn State Forestry Extension, perhaps others, that indicates if you count a certain number of egg masses in a certain area, it could result in devastation to primarily oak trees. If you go down to the bottom of the memo, we'll take a look at that chart. So egg masses are counted such that if you have over 250 egg masses per acre, that's the recommendation at which the Penn State Forestry Extension recommends mitigation. And when I say mitigation, that means spraying a certain compound that targets the spongy moth caterpillar population at a certain time of year. So the first thing that the arborist did an egg mass count. So he learned how to do egg mass counts. Then he did egg mass counts. He collected 34 at 34 different sample locations. He did this, and this memo summarizes those locations, the number of egg masses counted, and where in particular they were. So this was done over a period of weeks. I'll also start the discussion by saying that in the past, when residents have brought up concerns of a gypsy moth, now spongy moth infestation, Ferguson Township has not taken the lead in a abatement or spray program. There have been times, at least once, that I can recall in my tenure, that the county did hire someone whose title at the time was Gypsy Moth Coordinator. And that person did manage a spray program by the county, and I understand the county did receive state funding. So, why am I bringing this in front of you at this time? So last year, Patton Township did elect to spray in the spring for spongy moth control. And the Patton Township manager has reached out to neighboring municipalities to see if others are interested in piggybacking on their contract or doing spraying themselves. So in addition, the arborist has reached out to our neighboring foresters to see what, if any, spraying is being done in those forest areas. So quickly, I'm going to review with you these maps, and I'm only going to come back to them based on your interest in the amount of discussion that we might want to have. So that's very small, but it shows you the limits of the area where we did sampling, or the arborist did. So why did we pick these areas? These areas are consistent with the oak wilt ordinance, where we try to manage oak wilt in the urban forest. So the urban forest is within the growth area, which then by resolution was expanded to include any R1 or RR areas outside the growth area. So there are some of those areas, that have some smaller subdivisions of the west end. So that's the geographic area to begin with. So I think I'll go through these rather quickly, but you can see the neighborhoods, and you can see each red dot represents a sample point, and that's where our arborist set up, surveyed a 1/40th of an acre plot, counted egg masses, and extrapolated that by multiplying by 40 to get egg masses per acre. And he did that. You can just kind of click through the maps. He did that in the northern part of the township, the mid part of the township, the southern part of the township, and the western part of the township. After he did all those egg mass counts, where the points are shown on the maps and the tally is shown in those tables, he then put together the next set of maps in here which are actually what would be considered spray blocks. So these are the areas that then, if the township were to pursue this endeavor, would be the spray blocks that would be included in any contract for the aerial applicator. You can see now here's a southern area of Pine Grove Mills. I think the maps might call it southern Pine Grove Mills, western Pine Grove Mills, perhaps eastern Pine Grove Mills, but it basically is the southernmost neighborhoods that end up bordering the state forest is where the egg mass counts showed that it would warrant. You probably noticed some of the neighborhoods, so that's Thistlewood. You may have seen Sycamore in there, some of the properties to the west. Here's an area, this is Lions Point and Anaconda Drive, where egg mass counts were picked up on the western end. There were a number that they were not, but these are some of the areas that were. And again, those numbers are reflected in that memo on the front page. I think you're back to the northern maps now. I mentioned that Patton Township did a spray program last year. The matter was reviewed with the tree commission. I would say that the tree commission looked favorably upon this program. However, I want to make it clear to the board that staff is neither recommending for nor against. We're simply did the survey, collected the data, and presenting you with results to help you make an educated decision when it comes time to review the operating budget. So I think I should probably pause here and just see if there's any questions that I can answer.
Thanks so much. So any questions so far? Jeremy?
Not yet, but, well, it said Matt Heller had a question. Matt and Patty.
Okay, you do not have a question?
I do not have a question. Just helping you out.
Thanks. Okay, so I don't know who raised their hand first, so we'll go to Matt. Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay, I guess that was to me. My question is, being a child that kind of grew up in the Virgin Islands and can remember, like, mosquito trucks going down the road, laying out rolling fog. When we say aerial spraying, what exactly does that entail? What does that look like from the ground? And how is it received in Patton Township if they use that same method? I'm just curious to understand the application.
I can answer the first two questions because I observed it firsthand already. And then I'll try to answer the second question about Patton Township. So when the spray blocks are laid out, the sprayers and DCNR coordinate very closely because there's a very particular window when the caterpillar is of a certain size and feeding that it makes sense to spray. And when they do, it is helicopters and small planes with aerial spray bars that kind of spray a mist. They're really trying to spray the tops of the trees and have that material stick there. That's where the caterpillars will feed. It is pretty target specific, and when the rains come along, wash it away. You could probably read about the literature, and get educated on your own if you like. I believe it's BTA is the shorthand for it. I believe it's a bacteria that targets the life cycle of the caterpillar, at that very young and small age. In terms of how it was received, I think in general favorably, because Patton Township was requested to do it, and now they're doing it again. and they did determine a method to handle, objectors that were not interested in the spraying. And when that happens, if you accommodate them, then basically there's a block. And depending how small that property owner is, it could affect adjoining property owners, but it's excluded. And then if the excluders, besides the objector, wanted to participate, then they would have to handle that from the ground on their own. Does that help answer that, Matt?
It does, and I appreciate it. And what was the name again of the I guess the chemical that I could research? And is that inert to humans, or? I'll read up on it. I'm just curious.
Yes. One moment.
Oh, please, thank you. Because I know, like at Black Shannon, they've sprayed up there, and you don't realize how many spongy moths there are until all of a sudden they're just on a tree, deceased. So it can be very telling, also.
BTK. Bacillus thuringiensis, subspecies Kerstaki, a natural biological insecticide. I'm just looking at pa.gov. So it's the same compound used all over the state and used by DCNR. And I certainly don't want to try to sound like I'm an expert in this area of biology, because I'm not.
I appreciate that, and I can definitely do the research. So thank you so much for that, having the time.
So Matt, I'll chime in because I've looked into it a little bit. It's actually not a chemical, it's a bacterium, and it's naturally found in leaves in the soil. And it's used to kill off, it just happens to kill the caterpillars when the moths are in that phase.
I see. Thank you so much for that, Corey. And no, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. Go ahead.
Right. Thank you. So I just wanted to ask again, it's not something that we spray for every year. Is that right? Like there is a certain life cycle?
Yeah, so thanks, Patty, for asking that question. I should have mentioned this. So it appears that the ebbs and peaks and valleys are maybe every 7 years or so, that the spongy moth population tends to explode, and then it declines due to natural causes, or in some cases active spraying programs, and then it may subside for a number of years and then peak up again. I recall, I'm saying once every 7 years. Where I live, I've been there 15 years, and this was the second outbreak that I recall. And as in my tenure here, at the township for 25 years, really there's once in the past where they were very active that I recall. So it would probably not be something that would be done every year. It would be based on egg mass counts, and would probably be cyclic if you chose to embark on a program. Does that help?
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you to Larry for the egg mass count. That took a lot of work.
Yes.
Much appreciated.
Corey.
So I'm very much in favor of us doing the spraying. Given I'll share, my home is right near one of the plots where the count was very high. Walking through, so that's in the Park Hills area. You walk through that area, and even back over to Patton, just on the other side, and trees were lost this year, even with Patton spraying. Oak trees were lost because just so many of the leaves were eaten. it was very odd driving back in this neighborhood in the late spring, because with each progressive week, you got more and more light coming in through the canopy because the moths had eaten through the leaves. And us and some of our neighbors have had arborists back here to look at the problem, and they're, if the township wasn't going to do it, they're telling us that we need to treat our trees on our own, because it's going to get even worse next year. At least the arborist that I talked to is predicting if we're not going to do this treatment. So I would rather not lose our trees in our forested neighborhoods in our township. So I'm very much encouraging the rest of the board to hopefully we can find a way in the next budget to accommodate this.
Thanks. Jeremy?
I thank you for taking a look at this. Some of the counts were astonishing, especially over in Greenbrier, and as the board member that represents that area, that was an area where communications did come into the board about some serious concerns, and the numbers were definitely reflective of that. I also did have some communications over in the Park Forest area, and even Corey Gracie Griffith has confirmed that was another area of many spongy moths. So glad to see you do all that work, and also glad to see that we are working with Patton Township. That would be one thing that I would suggest, that intermunicipal cooperation, since we're both looking at taking this route.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Thank you so much for the update, and to Larry for doing those counts. Yeah, some of those numbers were really surprising.
I have one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
For Dave. So one of the things I was seeing is that the DNCR does, the state does this in their game lands, right? I was reading, I saw something where they actually spray as well. I don't know if it'd be worth reaching out to them, because if they're going to spray the game lands that is near both Patton and some of our sites, I mean, it might be another partnership worth looking into.
Yes, our arborist has reached out to all of our state-owned property neighbors and continues to, with that dialogue. I've not heard that he's heard definitively back from them yet whether or not they are or are not for next year, but we're going to continue to reach out to them.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dave.
Yes. Yeah, if they are, it helps eliminate some of that concern of blow-in, where one property treats but the other doesn't.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, all right, and we will address this at budget time then. So thanks very much. It's always nice to be able to get information and ask some questions separately from the budget discussion, so to really invest some time. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
If there's nothing else on that item, we'll go to communications to the board. We'll go to Jeremy.
Yeah, I had communications regarding trailer parks in the township, the West College neighborhood, and vehicles traveling on the bike path through Suburban Park.
Thank you. Okay, others online? Not Patty, go ahead.
I also had a communication about the West College neighborhood, and just a few discussions about Wawa.
Thanks. Anything else online? Not seeing anything else. I had some of those same communications. And then I also had one on a concern about traffic speed on Cherry Lane, specifically coming from Atherton toward Radio Park Elementary School, where there's a big hill to go down, and the speed that cars go down that hill toward the school. So that was brought up to me.
I didn't write down the last comment that Mr. Thompson had. Could you say that one more time for me?
Yes. I wish I had got more information, but there was a resident who has observed a vehicle traveling on the bike path from Viro Boulevard to the end of East Erin Drive. As one resident said, they've noticed it at night, so it is rather hard to get a description of the vehicle to really. And they described the frequency as infrequent.
It was at night in this case.
It was at night in this case, yeah.
Okay. One of the reasons I ask is that's under construction right now, so just wanted to, I'll check into that.
I did follow up with the resident because it's like, well, there is construction there. There was maybe some seal coating going on, so it could have been.
But we may have taken some things down and not putting some things back up, so I'll look into it.
Yeah, there was discussion of a bollard, and I do remember I pulled up a Google map, but didn't really see where one was there at one time. It's just open.
Okay, I'll check into it.
All right, thanks. And I'll just note some of our calendar items. We have a coffee and conversation this Saturday at 8 a.m. at Harner Farm. Fall belt collection is October 16th through 20th. There's a car seat check by the Ferguson Township Police Department at Ray Hall Honda on October 19th and from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. Our budget meetings are coming up October 24th and 26th. And wanted to note that our application period for authorities, boards, and commissions is open now through November 1st. For all open seats and terms ending. So, yes.
I was wondering if I could share something. Patty and we attended the legislative tour that the Penn State College of Ag put on this past week. It was a very good event. One thing we did learn is another thing to further our advocacy for rural broadband is a lot of farms are now relying on a lot more technology that does need broadband to really work together.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and that has been brought up just about the software updates that equipment needs, and having to upload those things and not having a reliable communications and bandwidth out there. So yeah, thanks for attending that and sharing. Appreciate that. Okay, is there anything else? And if not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
This is Patty, so moved.
And I'll second, and we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.